Hey everyone, welcome back to the Errant Venture. My name is Steve,
I'm Adam.
and this has been a fun week. We've heard a lot about Star Wars this week, and one of the big things J.J. Abrams came out and said was, you know, I had no direction or any plan for how the sequel trilogy was gonna go. And when you think back to how clueless and how things don't necessarily match up between the three movies, you can definitely see there really was not a plan of attack.
Well, I mean, one of the reasons why it didn't match up was like he says he doesn't have a plan. Okay, fine, but you could have fooled me. I mean, The Force Awakens really set up some potentially good storylines, and then you had Ryan Johnson come in who said, "Yeah, who cares about that?" And then JJ comes in and says, "Hey, let's try to go back to what I was doing." And now he says there's no plan.
Yeah, but even if you think about it, like you think of Snoke, at the end of the day, he was built up to be something in The Force Awakens. In The Last Jedi, he looks like, looks like someone from the
He
Playboy
was
Mansion.
useless.
And then in the Rise of Skywalker, you find out he was just a clone, just an extra clone tossed away. You see a whole bunch of spare ones or ones that never made it. But what this got me to thinking was, of the three trilogies, the prequels, the originals,
Mm-hmm.
and the sequels, which one do you
Excuse me.
think is the most full and complete series? To me, I think it's the prequels.
Well, all right, you say prequels, but are you counting the Clone Wars, like the TV series?
So I am because, and a lot of things that you see right now going on in Disney, they're coming in, they're kind of filling in gaps right now.
Yeah.
But because they went back and they did the Clone Wars, and I don't mean the original Clone Wars. I mean, the seasons of the Filoni Clone Wars.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, with that, it helped fill in a lot of gaps. It told more stories, and it added a lot of depth to what I still think was a very good storytelling in the prequels.
Okay. Well, I mean, as you know, I did not watch the series Clone Wars very much. I actually have gone back and started watching some of it, and I don't I I don't know if it really tells the complete story of the prequels.
So it doesn't tell the complete story of the prequels, but what it does is it fills in the gap. When you hear that line in A New Hope, I fought with your father in the Clone Wars, and from Obi-Wan to Luke, and then you see what really happens in Attack of the Clones, and then in Revenge of
Revenge of the
the
Sith.
Sith. Totally blanked on that for a second. But you see what happened in there. You kind of get the impression of like, okay, that's what happened. There is a time gap in between the two movies where pretty much the entire war takes place. But not only that, the Clone Wars answers a lot of questions that might not have been asked, but after you kind of learn the answer to, go, that really is a good question of how this happened or how that happened.
See, I really disagree. I really disagree. Now, I watched the 2003 Clone Wars, and these were on Cartoon Network. They were like maybe a minute long, episodes. But I thought it was great.
That was
And
the one done by the guy who did Samurai Jack, right?
yeah, yeah. And when I'm going into the Clone Wars TV show and the 2003 Cartoon Network version, there's a couple of things that I want to see. There's a couple of things that I want answered because I feel like Revenge of the Sith had a lot of issues, and one of those issues was um, why did why did they so readily accept an empire? You know, the reasoning they're giving us why Anakin turns to the dark side is really weak.
So,
And I was so when I'm so for me when I'm looking at it, I wanted to see from the Clone Wars. I wanted to see, you know, what toll the war took on the citizens to answer, why would they so readily accept this dictatorship. I would want to see either Anakin's growing anger or arrogance, and like a lot of the Jedi hating him because of it, or I just kind of wanted to see his extreme disillusionment with the Jedi.
So you do see a lot of that in the series. Like you see when Ahsoka gets banished from the Jedi Temple. Ahsoka is, I'm sure you know, is his Padawan.
Well, that was one season though. That was season 5, I believe, and it was wasn't it like the?
It was the end of it, but then it goes into season 6. You see him become a little bit more distraught. They even start making his colors in the grading darker to show him slowly transitioning over. And then towards the end, you actually see him really start to make that transition towards becoming Darth Vader. But one of the things that, and I don't know if you've seen these episodes, but there's a story arc on Mortis with the father, the daughter, and the son.
I did see that one.
And
those were the last ones that I was watching.
And in there, you actually see Anakin have his vision of him turning into Darth Vader.
Yeah, but then he erased his memory.
He erased his memory, but it's either way.
He erased his memory. It's not. But Anakin doesn't remember it.
But the thing is, he's the fact that it's still coming in. You can see that it's inside him. You know that, hey, that memory, that vision didn't come from nothing. He might not remember the vision, but it doesn't mean that the chemicals and everything that made that inside of him aren't still there. The emotions are still there. And you see everything pretty much going forward. You see the clones turning. You see the Jedi falling. And you see at the end, Vader rising. And with that in mind, that kind of forecasts everything. But also, there's so much that leads into it that not only helps with the Clone Wars and the prequels, but even the original trilogy. You learn how Yoda is able to transcend the Force and become part of the living Force. Without learning that in there, and it adds a lot, because now begs the question, how does Anakin know how to do it?
Totally different story.
But
especially since he was a Sith.
Well, apparently he came back, but either way, there's so much that takes place.
And actually, there's actually, I'm sorry to interrupt, but in the comics, in the Darth Vader comics, there's actually contradictory canon to that. So there's hi, special guest. Hi.
It's the podcast dog. Hey, Chance, go find Mom. Go find Mom and close the door on your way out.
Maybe not. Yeah, I'm going to stay here.
But
So anyways, but that's besides the point. For me, and I know it's not canon, but for me, I kind of feel that the 2003 Clone Wars gives us a bigger picture of why he would turn, showing a little bit of his anger. It shows it shows Palpatine kind of taking more executive action, and the Jedi, you just see their reactions to it, and you can tell, hey, we don't like it, and they're even taking steps against it. You can see the Jedi Council holding Anakin back, and Anakin resenting it.
But you do see a lot of this in between season 6 and season 7. You see a lot of his turn. You see a lot of Palpatine nudging and him going in that direction. But back to the main topic is, does the Clone Wars add that substance that really fills out the trilogy? There's a lot of stories that introduces more characters.
And
especially
definitely.
when you watch season 7. There's parts where the Jedi are meeting in the temple, and you see part of it in the movie, and then you actually see it.
That was really cool.
Yeah, how they
really
animated
cool.
right afterwards,
Yeah.
like a split second in between. And a lot of people are like, oh man, Ahsoka was in the movies. It's like, no. They just did a really fantastic job of storytelling.
You guys really did.
And
not that you're watching, but you really did.
And that's one of the best things about the animated series, that for both the Clone Wars and for Rebels, the storylines, the storytelling for all of it has been fantastic.
Yeah.
Just the only.
Oh, there's no doubt about that.
Yeah,
there's no doubt about that.
The only bad storytelling in Star Wars that's canon is Resistance.
Yeah,
But either way, like
I really agree with that.
but there's so much that you learn in the clone. Like I said, otherwise, if you just follow the movies, and you can just watch the movies and have a story, and
Yeah.
it will make sense. But it's very weakly
Yeah.
making sense.
Oh, definitely,
Like,
definitely.
Like you hear more about Anakin's hatred of sand than you do like how he actually turns. Like
And you kind of see Anakin more as like a whining baby than anything else.
exactly, and one of the things that you learn in the Clone Wars is more about how reckless he is. And you do see it in the movies, but you learn about more of how reckless he is.
Yeah, and you actually see that in 2003 Clone Wars as well.
I feel like in the little bit that I've seen of those, because for some reason I couldn't get into them.
They're only the combined 2 hours.
Yeah, but to me they kind of, like I said, I was never a Samurai Jack fan. I couldn't get into those. I really
Neither
tried
was I.
to. I tried to get into those. I remember being a kid, being this tall, and trying to watch them when it first came out, and just kind of going, nope, it didn't work for me.
It kind of sounds as though parts of the Clone Wars TV series, and at least in my opinion, parts of the 2003 Clone Wars really fills in the gap of between episode 2 and episode 3. One thing I like about the Clone Wars TV series, as you had mentioned, is that it does actually answer some questions, not about the prequels, but about what came the other movies. So it answers questions about, there's some questions answered about Rogue One. There's Solo, Star Wars Rebels,
There's a lot,
and the original trilogy.
and that's the fun part about it, because they brought in the Bad Batch, and which has been phenomenal so far.
Yeah,
And if you think about it,
really has. It really has.
No,
I've been watching it.
Like people were no one wanted the Clone Wars series to end. It was that great, but obviously it had to end, and this was a great way to carry it on. But if you think about it, the very last scene of season 7 of the Clone Wars hasn't taken place yet in the Bad Batch, because there's a time jump, because back in there you have stormtroopers where you still have clones.
Yeah, this is true.
So you're seeing like a whole gap, and it's fulfilling everything. So even with the Bad Batch right now, it's continuing to tell a story that, to me, it's all of Star Wars runs together, but it's still telling the story of the prequel trilogies. And seeing that being the last transition, like I'm really excited for the rest of that series. But the fact that the Clone Wars cartoon shows how much of a threat that Grievous is.
Yeah.
You watch him in the movies, and he seems he's a badass robot cyborg dude with 4 lightsabers.
You don't see him in action very often.
No, the best action he's in is when he's on fire.
Exactly.
But if you watch throughout the Clone Wars, you learn how good he is, how much of a threat he was to Jedi, how many more Jedi he killed, how he could kill them, more of his fighting styles, how more battles against Kenobi, as well as other Jedi.
Yeah.
And I can talk on and on and on about the Clone Wars and how fulfilling it is, and how.
Well, I know you're a huge fan of it.
Oh yeah,
you're a huge fan of it, so I know that.
Like when they brought Maul back, I damn near lost everything. I was just like, oh my god! And not only that, it gave Maul a character. Everyone, when you think of the Phantom Menace and you think of Maul, all you think of is 2-bladed lightsaber, black and red dude. That's really it.
Yeah.
You don't, because he has 3 words in the entire movie, and then when they finally gave him a voice, it's the best voice in Star Wars.
Yeah, I agree with that.
So
I do agree.
And they carried that on the Rebels.
Let me ask you this: do you think that the Clone Wars series showed enough political intrigue and corruption within the Republic, not just Mandalore? Because I know there was a lot of episodes, dealing with political corruption within Mandalore, but I'm talking about the entire Republic.
Yes, because there's plenty of episodes where you have the Kaminoans pushing their agenda, trying to push convince the Senate, hey, you guys got to buy 5 more years worth of clones. Like even in the, and
Now,
you
what
see
season?
it's in the middle, but you see part of it because if you watch the last episode of the Bad Batch, or you know that when Tarkin's talking, he goes, your contracts were with the Republic.
Yeah,
Those contracts were made in the Clone Wars.
right.
So they're not in the movies. They in the movies in the Clone Wars, they take a vote. A bunch of separatist victories took place, and you see them being the Senate being convinced, and the only people standing against them are Padme and Bail Organa, and they lose. The Republic orders more clones. You see Palpatine, turning the wheels, deregulating the banks. That way, and in doing so, it allows for massive loans at massive.
So it's pretty much the last few seasons of the Clone Wars is when things really start to happen. In that, like, it really starts to show us the bigger picture.
The Clone Wars was a slow-moving vehicle. It picked up speed as it went. You had the hour and a half movie to start it off with.
Yes.
And then you had a lot of character development, because if you remember when that movie came out, people hated Ahsoka. They made a whole bunch of episodes, had her stepping up, kind of changed her styling a little bit, made her a little bit more mature, but still with the immature edge to her.
Yeah.
And kind of like the yin and yang to Anakin.
Right.
And as they developed that over the first 2-3 seasons, she turned into someone who you were just as much in love with her as you were with Obi-Wan and as you were with Anakin.
Which is all fine and dandy, but you know what? To be quite honest, if I want to get the full picture of the Clone Wars, I don't care about some of the other people. I want to see what happens in between to, number one, make Anakin turn.
That's Ahsoka. That right there is Ahsoka, because the biggest thing to him turning was when she was banished without a trial, without anything being proven, and she was banished, and then she refused to come back, saying no because you guys betrayed me.
But again, I have to wait until season 5 for that to happen.
Well, otherwise it would have been a very short series.
Well, that's true, but okay, got me there with that one, but. I wanted to see, a lot of the political intrigue like I was talking about. I really want to know because, Padme sits there in Revenge of the Sith and goes, oh, so this is how, democracy dies, with thunderous applause, or whatever the line really is. But, how can that happen? I wanted to see devastation. I wanted to see the political intrigue. I wanted to see the citizens of the Republic so sick of what was going on that Palpatine could have sold them a pink elephant to solve their problems, and they would have happily have taken it. I would have liked to have seen, the Jedi kind of veering away from what they're supposed to be and getting more political to counter what they perceived as, Palpatine getting too powerful, that people lose faith in them.
So you do kind of start to see it, not so much about the Jedi until really the end of the last season.
There you go. You gotta wait until like the last couple seasons.
But the thing is, you're also trying to cram 4 years of stories into only a few episodes. Is what you're saying. You're saying you want everything to happen at once instead of having a story to it.
I'm not saying everything at once, but
like what you're saying is you want a movie in between 2 and 3 to tell you the story.
I would like that. Yeah. Actually, that is what I would want. And I'll tell you, that's to kind of veer away just for a second. That's what we were hoping for. When we found out, episode 2, great, it's going to be the Clone Wars. Great. We wanted to see the Clone Wars. When episode 2 happened, okay, fine, you start it. Great. So then episode 3, well, we want to see the Clone Wars.
Well,
and all we saw was like, really, the Clone Wars was over within the first, 15 minutes of the film?
Well, that's why they have a whole series. A lot of people wanted to see the Clone Wars. and you can't address more than what you can address in an episode. But it's also, you gotta remember, when this series first started, you had the movie, and by the end of season 1 or season 2, where they could have moved into things, you also gotta remember different people owned the franchise at that point. It started off on what was it, Comedy Central? I'm sorry, Cartoon Network.
Cartoon Network, yeah.
Then it went to Netflix.
Yeah.
And then it went to Disney. So you had a whole lot of things. And some of the storytelling, you might not have been able to get all of it out in the amount of time. Remember, it was originally 5 seasons, then the 6th season, then the 7th season.
I'm a real snob when it comes to that. and let me tell you, you know, I'm a Star Trek fan also.
Yeah.
And one of the arguments I always get into is about what, especially with the new show Discovery, which has been on for a couple of years now, but the arguments that I get into are, this, they're telling us that it was this and it's not, it's, something different, and they're like, well, you have the different companies which owned it, and when this company owned it, it was this, and when this company owned it, it's this reality, and when this company owns it, it's that.
But that's a big.
Personally, for me,
that is a big deal though, because think of it this way: say Lucas.
It
is a big deal, but say Lucas never sold, and let's say he was able to make everything he wanted to make, and he didn't stop making movies. You never would have had Kathleen Kennedy pushing her agenda on the sequels. You never would.
That would have been a good thing.
I know.
That would have been a good thing.
But that would have been. But that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
He would have continued his. The Clone Wars was done.
But he had control over the franchise until he sold it to Disney.
Yes, he did have control over the franchise. He did. He did the prequels. He did the originals. He did the Clone Wars. He did Rebels.
So whoever was doing Clone Wars at whatever year, whatever season,
the thing is, you only have so much.
Answer to him.
Not quite. You had to answer to him before the network. The network gets the final say. If the network doesn't I'm a wrestling fan. There's a lot of things that now WWE just moved over to Peacock. They can't air a bunch of stuff that came out back in the day. They will not.
Yeah, I know. Tell me about it. I got to go on YouTube.
Exactly, but they will not put it on there because the network has the final say. So when you look back at the Clone Wars and you think, you don't get a 5-year or 6-year contract, and this actually feeds more to your point. You get a couple of years. Usually it's your first season, then you might get another 2 years to tell your story, and you have to build up a lot in there. And just like with the sequel trilogy, they might have had maybe an end goal. I don't think season 7 was a thought of back then. I legitimately think this was to tell the story of Anakin kind of growing up in between, watching the wars, kind of more bonding with the characters, because otherwise, if you just watch the movies, all you see is Anakin being whiny and going through his emo phase, and then Vadering out.
Yeah.
And there's not a lot of substance to it. It's very quick, and you do see in the now I get it. You want to see it quicker. You're expecting something that happens right away, but there is a 4-year time period.
And I completely understand your point. And as a Star Wars fan, I'll sit there and I'll watch it because it's Star Wars. You're talking to somebody who'll sit there and will watch the holiday special because it's Star Wars. So, but when you get somebody who's hasn't been a Star Wars fan for their entire life, and they want to get a full picture of it, you're going to have them watch all 7 seasons?
It depends on how much they want to get into it.
Right, but when we're talking about getting the full picture, right? You're talking about having someone who isn't that die-hard lifelong fan, but wants the bigger picture. What are you going to tell them to watch?
Honestly, if that's the situation, I'm going to tell them to stick with the movies. Because here's the thing. You have episode 1, which tells a story. You have episode 2, which obviously there's a time jump, which continues loosely the original story, but now starts building up into the Clone Wars.
Right.
And you have episode 3, which takes place a little bit later and completes the Clone Wars. And then you have your gap before you have Episode 4, unless you put in Solo and Rogue One.
Right.
So with all that, you can get away with just watching the movies. There's plenty of people out there who've never watched a single episode of anything that is not the movies. You know,
I'm sure.
and just go back to when the movies first came out. There was no cartoons, so do you need to watch the cartoons to pretty much get the gist of it?
Well, actually,
no, you don't.
There wasn't a cartoon until there wasn't a cartoon until after Return of the Jedi, and then you had the Ewok cartoon.
Overreaching.
Just saying.
I'm talking about these. But
yeah.
Because I know not that many people compared to the Star Wars masses. There's a lot of people out there who do read the comic books and have read regular books.
Mm-hmm.
But to most people, to the casual fan, or even to a lot of people who claim to be diehards, they've never read the comic books. They've never read the books. You want to know how many people really who are talking about Mara Jade right now knew who she was 3 weeks ago?
Oh, I know.
So no one people are like, what? Luke had a wife?
And that cracks me up when they sit there and they talk about say Mara Jade, like they know who she is, like they've been reading this for years, and it's like, well, no, you haven't.
And, you know what? If you really want to know if someone knows who Mara Jade is, ask who Talon Card is. But at the end of the day, it's just funny because all that feeds right into the name of the show.
Yeah, exactly.
But so with all that, you can just watch the movies. You can get everything you need out of the movies. The reason why they come out with these type of cartoons is, one, it's geared towards fans. It's made for kids. It's made for adults. The storytelling, there's plenty that kids aren't going to appreciate. At the same time, I could do without any Jar Jar scenes. But at the end of the day,
it's going to sell merchandise.
It's going to sell merchandise, but it's going to tell stories.
Yeah.
And some of the best Star Wars material did not take place on the big screen.
No, it did not.
There are story arcs throughout the Clone Wars, throughout Rebels, which are just amazing. And some of them don't involve Anakin. They don't involve any characters from the movies.
Well, I was thinking of what is now considered Legends. Because, prior to Disney buying it, it was canon. And there were a lot of stories that continued the adventures that were really excellent. But you never saw them on screen.
And that's the big issue right there. You never saw them on screen. And I do like the way that they're kind of trying to bring in more things from Legends.
Yes.
A lot of things. We're seeing a lot of things in Legends showing up now and kind of in the current season of the Bad Batch. For those who want to call it Season 8 of the Clone Wars, I have a feeling you're about to see the Kaminoan uprise, which was in Legends, where the Emperor decides, hey, we don't want to have any more clones. They go after the Kaminoans. The Kaminoans breed their own clones to protect them, and then just get completely decimated by the 501st.
Right.
Led by Boba Fett, also a clone. Boom. But that's another thing. You get a lot of backstory about Boba Fett.
I don't think we're going to have Boba Fett leading the charge, though.
Not in this one.
No.
But that's fine. Boba Fett just got a whole series. He's good.
Well, yeah, adult, yeah.
But right now, I do expect good things to happen. I do expect it to be very entertaining. But we're seeing more of Legends showing up in canon.
Yeah.
And a lot of what we're enjoying right now, if it wasn't for storylines that didn't make sense, there would be no Bad Batch. Because you got to remember, the Bad Batch was all about rescuing a clone who was not in the movies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, honestly, if you want to get technical about things, if it wasn't for the gaps that are in the movies, we wouldn't have had any of the series. We wouldn't have had the Clone Wars series. We wouldn't have had Rebels.
And that's why you have
we wouldn't have had Resistance.
And that's why the Clone Wars, with all of its extra fluff, makes it a fuller trilogy.
I wouldn't go that far. I wouldn't go that far. I mean, I feel that we get enough glimpses in the 2003 Clone Wars, which again, it's not canon, but it's my opinion, so bite me. I feel that we see enough of in the 2003 Clone Wars to really make it like the fourth prequel. It fills in some of those gaps. Not all of it, and to be honest, I don't think that the Clone Wars series also fills in all of those gaps. Between the two of them, they fill a lot of it, most of it.
Well, you got to think of,
But
you have to think of, the gaps that I want to hear about are going to be different, or the stories that I want to hear about and want to know more about are going to be different than what you want to know more about, which is going to be different than what, the droid wants to know about.
It's going to be different than what you want.
And you. And that's what
and you too, I see you're raising your hand.
So because of that, you have so many people wanting so many things. A lot of people at the end of the day just want more good Star Wars content, and that's what the Clone Wars. Don't get me wrong. There were some added episodes that I did not need to see. I didn't need to see the episodes where R2 and C-3PO are running around lost. Didn't need to see that. I didn't need to see the episode where the droids and the little dude, get lost.
Yeah.
Didn't need that. But you also learn more about the Force. You learn about, the creation of the Force. You learn about the creation from Qui-Gon Jinn, how he discovered and why he wasn't able to fully succeed at what he was trying to do.
Yeah.
Because he never finished learning. You learn...
And that was in
6.
The... What?
That was in season 6.
Season 6. Okay.
That was in season 6.
I was going to say it was in the episode with the father and the two Force kids.
That was a different...
They mentioned it, though.
They mentioned it, but you don't get Qui-Gon until season 6 when he's leading Yoda through it.
Okay.
And if you think about it, that also fills into the very end of Revenge of the Sith, where Yoda says to Obi-Wan, have some learning for you to do, while you're in quarantine.
So basically what we're saying, boys and girls, is you need to get a Mac or any other video editing program, take a lot of these episodes and kind of piece them together to make your own movie to fill in your own story of what you think fills in all the gaps.
So I'm gonna throw there's a show out on YouTube that I watch, and I'm gonna throw them a shameless plug, Generation Tech, and I love these guys. It's these two guys who talk. They talk. I believe they even talk Star Trek. They talk.
I
Star
might have
Wars,
seen some of their episodes,
and they're great. And one of the things that Alan did was, at least I don't know if he did the editing, but he's the host who does it. Goes through and makes like long hour episodes of pretty much slimming down each year, not season, year of the Clone Wars.
Okay.
So it's 4 years. And he did, everything they do is great. Big fan of their channel. But, that might be kind of something that you want to watch, because that's where you're really going to learn everything. And he's so good at explaining everything that, that's probably what you're looking for.
It probably is.
But
it probably is.
But I do think...
I mean, don't get me wrong, I love watching the series and everything, but... there are times, you just want to watch the movies. You don't want to spend, hours and hours and weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks trying to watch everything.
Fair enough. And, but that's also where, like I said, you learn a lot. Every time something new happens in Star Wars, they always say, hey, you need to go back and watch this show, this season, this episode. At the end of season 1 of The Mandalorian, when the Darksaber came out, they went back and said there's articles all over the place to learn more about the Darksaber, because all you saw was a black lightsaber.
Yeah.
But to learn more about it,
you gotta watch Clone Wars, and you gotta watch episodes of Rebels.
You don't even need to watch episodes of Rebels for that. You learn the whole backstory from it in the Clone Wars.
No, you still need to watch episodes of Rebels.
I'm not gonna say it's a bad idea. It's a great series. But
good idea.
but you learn a lot more about it
in the Clone Wars. Yeah.
So, at the end of the day, Rebels is still my favorite, story. The whole thing is perfect.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the fact, but once again, the fact that is because it's a story that wasn't told, didn't need to be told. It's nice that it was told, but the Clone Wars to me fills in a lot of gaps in between. There is a lot of fluff because at the end of the day, it's still a business, still got to make money, and there's a
They
lot.
want to go as long as they can.
And there's a lot of stories told.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think a Star Wars universe with Captain Rex in it is a much better place. like I loved Captain Rex.
Yeah.
So but without the Clone Wars, you're just stuck with.
Have it.
You're stuck with Cody.
What I like.
You're stuck with Cody.
You're stuck with Cody.
No one likes Cody.
That's because he gives Obi-Wan his lightsaber back.
I know, and if the Emperor called just 30 seconds earlier.
Totally different story.
Oh yeah.
What I tell you what I really liked about one of the things I really liked about the Clone Wars series is that they gave the clones personalities, they gave them names, they gave them their own identities.
Hey,
I really do like that.
It shows more of the brotherhood of the clones. If you watch in Attack of the Clones when Obi-Wan goes to Kamino, and you kind of even just watch the clones as they show them, they show them all online getting their equipment. You show them in the lunchroom. You show them in the learning. In there, you get or at least I got the opinion watching it, that they're all independent. They're all you don't see them communicating with each other. You see them just eating, and the guys looking around. You see them, learning with the touchscreen in front of them. You don't get a chance to see the training that they go through, and the brotherhood. And you see more in the Clone Wars, the brotherhood, the dedication that the clones. Otherwise, they literally seem like robots in the movies.
Yeah, they do.
But in the Clone Wars, you see, how dedicated they are to Ahsoka. That they creepily paint her face on their helmets. But then you also see
pretty creepy.
Yeah,
I have to say.
But then there's plenty of episodes where you have young Boba Fett as a member of with other young clones learning. You also get to learn about more about young Jedi. Mm-hmm. But on top of that, you also get to see the clones going through their training.
Yeah.
And it really, like I said, it rounds it out. Is there a lot of stuff in there that doesn't need to be there? Absolutely. There's a couple hundred episodes.
But like you have said many times, that's the nature of a series, is that you're going to have episodes that just you don't really need.
Like, if you think about it, as much as I enjoyed the last episode of The Bad Batch, it did next to nothing.
Yeah.
Like, it introduced, I'm terrible saying, Finnick Shend. Another sniper.
Listen, I'm the one that calls all my students Bob when I forget their names. So,
there you go. So, but you get, other than introducing her, it's just another thing to further a plot.
Yeah.
Like, they could have done a lot better, but a lot of things in the episode did not need to happen. I enjoyed it all the same. I'm not saying it was bad, but that's the thing. It's a story, and in a lot of these things, it's building stories, and even with the fluff, could it have been condensed? Absolutely. Am I happy it wasn't? Absolutely. I still think that with everything in there, it was a great time for Star Wars.
Yeah.
It made the movies that much better. It makes the characters that much more relatable. Now, the one thing that did happen is, I got my wife to watch literally everything that Star Wars has made except Resistance. And, and she'll be the first to point out, she loves Anakin in the Clone Wars. But then when you see him in the movies, she's like, that whiny kid? That guy? Like, how you have Anakin portrayed as such a badass?
I agree with her completely.
Oh, it's hard not to.
It's just one, and reason why we had this topic was because, when you watch the prequels, it's like, oh, all he's doing is whining, and this guy's going to be Vader? I don't get it. I don't see it.
Exactly. And not only that, there's not much of a description as to what the yellow eyes mean if you don't know anything when you watch the movie.
That's true.
You don't really see a transition. You just kind of see him going through the motions, and all of a sudden his eyes are yellow. And it's like, okay, you have a hood on, your eyes are yellow, you kind of look like a Jawa.
What's up with that?
Exactly, and you do get a chance to learn more about that in the card. You learn more about the Sith. You see more things about the Sith. They bring in Bane. They bring in other, characters that might just be ghosts in the series, but it brings them in. There's so much good storytelling, and it makes Yoda seem more than like just a little Muppet.
Yeah.
So like for me, yes, there's always going to be fluff in every series, but I think they did a great job tying things together. They did, especially in season 7, outside of the middle episodes, the beginning of the Ahsoka storyline.
Yeah.
Like I could have done without that, but the way they ended that and tied it in, it just brought the whole story around, and then even continuing that storyline a little bit into Rebels. Just a lot, that series did more for Star Wars than either of us can really imagine.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So for me, do I think that it helped the series, helped the sequel, the prequel trilogy?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, it filled it in. Now, I'm happy they didn't try to fill in the gap between 1 and 2. I don't think
we don't really need that.
No, you don't.
I'll be honest. I don't think we don't. I mean, there's books about it. We don't need it.
No,
we don't need to know that.
So I'm glad they didn't go that route.
Yeah.
But I at least think in terms of this, the sequels. I'm sorry, I keep saying
prequels.
The prequels are
well. It's hard not to, because I mean, you look at the timeline and it's like we have 4, 5, and 6, and now all of a sudden we got 1, 2, and 3, and you really want to call them sequels. But go ahead. Sorry.
Exactly, but with all of the stuff that's put in during that, and then even how it linked into Rebels, it's really hard not to look at the prequel trilogy as the most complete trilogy, and it is because of the cartoons. Because where Rebels is amazing, it doesn't really add that much to the original trilogy, and where Resistance sucked, it added nothing to the sequel trilogy.
Okay. Now, so I'm going to alter my opinion a little bit. For me...
That means I'm winning.
This is not a contest. Just saying.
It's a debate.
So, I am altering my opinion a little bit. I do still feel that if you want a shorter version, like a fourth movie, if you will, of the prequels, I say the 2003 Clone Wars still does enough to fill in that gap to make the third movie make a little bit more sense. But if you want a lot fuller, more in-depth fill in the blank, if you will, then yeah, you would definitely go with the Clone Wars TV series. Although I would start from like season 4 or 5, something like that.
I do think you still have to watch the movie to understand who Ahsoka is.
All right, we'll add the movie. We'll add the movie. We'll add the movie in.
And I do kind of wish that movie didn't exist, and that they just kind of made like a 1-hour first episode or a 45-minute first episode. Just you didn't need it to be that long, but it could have been just a regular episode to kind of describe how he got her.
Now, as far as Rebels go, I think Rebels does bring something to the original trilogy.
I didn't say it didn't. Everything, even the Clone Wars, brings stuff to the original trilogy. Everything in Star Wars is linked. But does it bring enough to the original trilogy to say that, hey, Clone Wars brought, a 10-pound bag to the prequels? To me,
is it necessary? Is it necessary?
Oh, absolutely. There are so many there's so many loopholes.
Is Rebels necessary to understand the original trilogy?
Absolutely not.
And that is what you're saying. Absolutely not. And I do agree with that.
What
Rebels does for me is that it kind of fills in and Rogue One does the same thing. It kind of fills in a little bit of a gap to show you, hey, this is what's been going on.
Exactly. Like, if you think about it, Solo, Rebels, Rogue One, and Resistance, all Star Wars stuff
Hmm.
no one asked for.
That's
But
true.
we're very well, minus Resistance, but we're very happy to get.
I like how you used the middle finger for that too.
Yep. But no, I loved Rebels.
Yeah.
I loved Rogue One. I enjoyed Solo very much. Make Solo 2 happen. Hashtag.
Hashtag make Solo 2 happen. Yes. Was it, and you and I have had a lot of conversations about this. Is it an epic adventure? No. Does it have to be an epic adventure? No. It's a good movie.
Remember, it's not a Star Wars movie. It's a Star Wars story.
Exactly.
So, but once again, stuff. I love Han Solo. One of my favorite characters in the entire series.
Yeah.
But I didn't need it, and that's the thing.
It's not necessary.
Those series, and even if you think about it, a lot of things or a lot of the highs in those series really don't do anything. Like the only thing that Rebels really does that helps the original trilogy, in my opinion, is you see that Obi-Wan is still on Tatooine. You see Luke running in the distance,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. Everything else doesn't matter. And even that scene with him watching Luke after he defeated Maul doesn't matter.
It does show something. It shows how bad the Empire is.
Well,
Which again,
but
it's not something, and don't get me wrong, it's not something that's necessary. I don't have to watch Rebels in order for me to understand what's going on in the original trilogy. I don't need to watch that. It gives me a bigger picture of the state of the galaxy, how the Empire is, and the same thing with, well, wait, I can't. I'm going to stop with that. I was about to say something about Rogue One, but I'm thinking about it, and I get no. So it gives us an idea of how the Empire is, so we can see. Oh, all right, these people really do have to be overthrown. Rogue One, I think, is necessary to watch before the original, at least before Episode 4.
well, nowadays, if I'm gonna watch it, I'm gonna watch it from really from 1 to 9.
Well, yeah, of
And
course.
and I include Solo and I include Rogue One.
But
in
here's
there.
why I mean, Rogue One. It's the entire mission of how they get the plans for the Death Star, and it really leads right up to it. And I do think it is necessary to watch, not for like, oh, who is Leia or who is Luke, but just to get the whole story of, hey, the plans of the Death Star. The Death Star is bad,
So here's the thing.
and all that.
So that movie just adds the
Not that I cared about the characters. That's a different story.
well, enough people like.
I mean, I like the characters. I like the characters, but I didn't care. Like,
enough people liked them
I
where
didn't
it's
care
getting a
that they all died.
where
It
it's-
didn't bother me at all.
well, enough people liked them. They're getting a prequel.
Yeah, this is true.
But at the end of the day, Rogue One did help the lead into Episode 4.
Mm-hmm.
But once again, if they didn't make the movie, you learn enough about it in 2 lines in the movie to not think about it. I never heard anyone ask the story
So
of how they got the plans, just that they got the plans.
I understand all about exposition and everything like that. My theater directing professor when I was in college always said, show it. If it's too long to show, then you say it. But thankfully, these are movies, so you can make a whole movie about it.
And you can always go the Harry Potter and Twilight style and say, hey, we know how to make more money. Episode 7, Part 1.
Exactly.
But at the end of the day, final thoughts. Which do you think? Do you think Clone Wars fills out the? Are you on my side where you say, hey, the prequel trilogy is the most complete, because it has the cartoons that help back it up, or do you think there's a different one?
No, I say right now, as of right now, Clone the prequel trilogy is the most complete. There has been enough shown on screen, big screen and little screen, to give us the big picture. Whichever Clone Wars you like more or whatever you take from it, it still gives a bigger picture. But that doesn't mean that they're, not going to come along, in a few years and say, hey, we're going to make a TV show about, their rebellion.
And that's I was actually going to ask an afterthought question, and the afterthought question was going to be, do you think they should try to fill in the gaps of the original trilogy with either cartoons? I wouldn't want to go with the live thing at this point, but do you think they should do it? I think, to me, I think it's one a little too late. I think you're starting to get to that point where you're going to be mixing stories, and the one thing about Star Wars that is kind of getting to me is they keep creating characters, and everything they do, it has the effect on all the stuff. Like, there's so many things in the original trilogy that really have been turned into plot holes just because they've made more stories with more characters, and more things happening. And even how you hear them try to talk about, oh well, Grogu was at the temple the night it fell. And they try, there's pictures that Disney came out with where he's retconned into him.
Yeah.
And, but do you think if they came up with another, with some sort of series to fill in the gaps of the original trilogy?
To answer your question with that, in the immortal words of Stone Cold Steve Austin, and this is just because I am a Star Wars fan, and let me preface that by saying, I do believe that they are oversaturating the market with Star Wars, and that can be a very, very bad thing.
That's one of the reasons why I think people didn't like Solo as much when it first came out. You were getting so much Star Wars, it was overboard.
Actually, with Solo suffered the after effects of The Last Jedi.
Well, like I said, it was just.
I think that was a big problem with Solo. Not that there's anything not that it had anything to do. One had anything to do with the other. It's just that they were both Star Wars, and there was still so much animosity from The Last Jedi that they just kind of went into Solo. Well,
there was that, because if you remember, there was talks. I don't know how far they were about making a Boba Fett, movie.
Yeah.
And I'm glad they stopped. I'm glad they kind of gave us a little bit of a break. And at least now we've had a decent break from the big screen.
Yeah.
Because I've been loving everything that's come out on the small one, and I am curious to see about how the Book of Boba Fett is. I did hear that Rangers got canceled.
Yes, Rangers did get canceled.
So,
and there's rumors about what they're going to put in its place.
I've heard a few things, but we'll hold on to that for future conversations.
Yep. But as everything that I had said before about the oversaturation aside, in the immortal words of Stone Cold Steve Austin, hell yeah.
You think there should be a cartoon?
I think there should. I don't know about a cartoon. There should be something. I'm going to put it that way.
So
there should be something to kind of fill in the gap. And again, I say this because I am a very huge Star Wars fan that I've been, watching since 1977. There I am, 4 years old, going to the movies with my dad to see Star Wars Episode 4.
So, and we'll end it on this note. So, I do agree there needs to be something. In my mind, when I first saw Star Wars, I had no clue how old Darth Vader is. No clue. You don't really you just realize, okay, he's an adult. You don't think you start to get more of a, okay, well, he's Luke's dad. He's got to at least be 16 to 20 years older than Luke.
Right.
It's not until a little bit later you learn he's in his mid-late 40s.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot that's happened between when him being 20 and being put in the suit and A New Hope. And I would like to see some stuff of him doing live action stuff of him fighting. You get that glimpse in Rogue One.
Yeah.
But you're still talking like 20 years in between
Yeah.
of,
And anything you do see, it's not on screen. It's
in-
actually in the comics.
or it's in Rebels.
Yes.
So, but that's all we got for today. Once again, I'm Steve.
I'm Adam.
And thank you for joining us on the Errant Venture. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And we'll see you guys on the next episode.